How about I show you some techniques you can use to get a neat looking outfit and a well fitted one at that. You're welcome to Kemi Africa. My name is Kemi Omarube. I would like to start by showing you 3 methods of joining your side seams together. So once you're done with an outfit, your zip is fixed, the sleeves are fixed, and what is left is just to attach the front piece to the back piece. You have to take your time to arrange this properly, make it align with each other. The armhole line or the armhole curve should align with that of for the front should align with that of the back. The side seam of along the waistline and along the hip should be well aligned. So I like to ensure this by making sure that I pin the front and the back piece from top to bottom together. And if at all there is any discrepancies in the width of the fabric, I centralize the back against the front, so that way at least you're sure that you have a central looking outfit. You know what I mean, guys. Now the first method, the same thing I'll be doing here applies to the sleeve. So I won't go into the sleeve because you're joining from the edge of the sleeve downward and you just take the sleeve measurement the same way. So you start by placing your tape at the back, at the center back, at the teeth of the zipper, and you measure the bust circumference divided by 4. Move on to the waistline and do the same thing. Waist circumference divided by 4. You can even take the measurement from the top of your shoulder up to the waistline if you're a little bit confused on where the waistline is. Okay, but most time it's pretty obvious. Then you place your tape on the point you marked out for the waistline and take the hip line vertically. So having done that, place your tape again on the zipper along the hip line and measure the hip circumference divided by 4. So from the hip downwards, just follow the same seam allowance all the way down. You don't necessarily need to take the measurement along the hem of your clothes. So once you do this, you're following the same allowance you took, you are fine. Once you're done sewing that first seam all the way down from the sleeve to the hem, you turn your dress around so that you can see the right side. Then you go ahead to take the measurement divided by 2. Remember that from the center back we took the measurement divided by 4, right? So now take the bust circumference from the seam, because you can see the seam on at the front as well, that seam you did on one of the sides. So take the bust circumference divided by 4 and mark it on the other side. Move on to the waist circumference and do the same thing. Waist circumference divided by 4, and like I said, you can measure from your waist circumference to know the position of the hip. And for this I made use of 9 inches, so I know where to place my tape along the hip line. So I took the hip circumference divided by 2 at that point. Now once you're done marking the hip line, you go ahead, follow the seam allowance all the way down and sew your side seam together. Now let's look at the second method you can employ when joining your side seams. So for this one, you lay your fabric, pin the sides together like we did in the first method. So you're taking your measurement from the edge of the fabric this time, not from the center back. So place your tape from on the seam, on the same allowance. That's the same allowance inclusive now. Then measure the bust circumference divided by 2. Make sure that your fabric is laying or your dress is laying flat. Then mark that measurement you have there. So what you do next is to take the measurement of the allowance you have along that side. Now you can see where I marked, right? So I'll just place my tape on that point and measure to the other side of the fabric. For example, I can see that this is 2 inches. So what it means is that I have an excess of 2 inches. Because of that, I will divide that 2 inches into 2, mark 1 inch on the left, another 1 inch on the right. So that way you take your correct measurement, no excesses left on the dress. So this is what I am doing here. I marked 1 inch towards the side of the fabric on this side, and I did the same thing on the other side. Now I will move on to the waistline and repeat the process. From the edge of the fabric, the waist circumference divided by 2, you mark what you have, measure the excess you have right there, and that will form your seam allowance when you divide it by 2. So you mark 1 inch or whatever your excess is divided by 2, and you mark it on both sides, and that way you're getting your right measurement. Now repeat the process again on the hip line and then join all your dots together from top to bottom. That's from the sleeve to the bottom. Go ahead and sew your side seams by that allowance. Now for the third method, I will just be explaining. For this one, I use it for shift dresses, kaftans, free clothes that already has ease allowance in them. So there's really not many chances that you get it wrong, right? With this one, when I'm cutting, I cut using 1 inch side seam allowance, and once it's time to join the side seams, I just go ahead and sew from my sleeve all the way to the hem without having to measure out the dimensions. That is it with joining your side seams. Other tips you should note while finishing up your outfit is: 1. Ensure that you open up your seam allowances along the sleeve and also the hem of your dress. Make sure that you open up your seam allowance to give you a nice finishing along the hemline. So you go ahead to sew your hemline. That means you're joining your side seam before sewing the hemline, right? Yes. So secondly, cutting off your threads is very important, guys. Make sure that you make this part of your process. Cut off the excess threads all around the dresses. If you pick up a dress with so many threads around it, that will just give you a feel that this is not it. You won't love the finishing on the outfit. It doesn't matter the type of designs you have on it. Thirdly, do not neglect pressing your seam lines. Don't neglect pressing as you sew, and at the end of your sewing process, make sure that you give those side seam a very good press. I prefer to make use of a steam press, guys. This will make a huge difference in your finishing. Make sure that you cross-check your measurement. Even though you have employed all the methods of joining side seams, still go ahead, turn your dress to the right side and take the measurements along the sleeve, the bust, the waist, the hip line. Ensure that you do this before you hand over this outfit to your clients. Last but not the least, make sure that you schedule a time for fitting. Now, so many people frown at that. They feel, oh, why do you need to make adjustments when I come for fitting and all of that? Ensure that your client understand beforehand that scheduling a time for fitting is a very necessary part of the process for bespoke pieces. So explain that beforehand, and if you have to make any correction thereafter, it is absolutely fine. With this, we have come to the end of this video. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed watching this, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel and share the video. Bye. See you in the next video.